Hello, today is September 29th, 2025. This is my second episode in my podcast series. It's just random thoughts said out loud on a topic about anything and everything. Today's topic is about how civil wars and revolutionary wars will be fought in the first half of the 21st century. First, I want to compare the differences between something I'm calling urban and rural guerrilla warfare, which I will designate as URG, and the chain of command, or COC. The strengths of URG is that there can be multiple variations of command structures. They may follow a similar chain of command structure at a low level, or it could be random individuals with mutual goals working together to accomplish an objective. They are largely unpredictable since it's basically an unorganized or disorganized assortment of militia groups, individuals, cells, or groups that blend in with civilian populations. Unlike the COC, which relies on conscription, control, and uniformity, URG involvement is based on fighting for freedom. Because of a flexible command structure, URG are always planning and are quick to decide on the next objective. There's no bureaucracy, no waiting for orders from the commander-in-chief or general, which is usually slower to respond. However, some weaknesses for URG are that they are mostly isolated positions based on locale. They have to rely on third-party encryption and communication and can't fortify or hold any defensive positions. It's also a chaotic command structure where no one follows a clear leader. Each individual must make their own decision on whether or not to participate. Another term I call node targeting is something URG warfare will incorporate. Rather than targeting supply lines and military positions, URG relies on skirmishes, targeting political and military property, families, surveillance networks, and detention facilities and prison camps. These same tactics have been used by revolutionary groups, gangs, and even governments. People in power are typically wealthy and own multiple private properties that are largely unprotected. These are easy targets and will be burned down. Once military personnel are used to guard private compounds, then military bases and off-base housing will be targeted next. This results in military personnel having to choose whether to protect their own families or homes or to protect their bosses. The aim is to demoralize and weaken the will to fight against its own citizens because there will eventually be nothing to gain from it. The taking or killing of wealthy and military family members will also occur, either as bargaining chips or acts of revenge. Since modern warfare relies heavily on surveillance, public CCTV cameras, military drones, smartphones, dashcams, and so on, these will also be easy targets as control structures are heavily reliant on information. Detention, internment, and prison camps will also be targeted as they offer immediate recruitment for military resistance. There are many problems with modern military forces in URG warfare. They must rely on state and local governments to handle lockdowns and curfews. They are unable to use heavy ordnance that may incur collateral damage. The use of advanced military is largely useless, and they must rely on drones and Marines or ICE for tactical response units. They also need to rely on detention facilities as well as internment and prison camps for manual labor in order to sustain military positions. They also must rely on strong foreign allies to handle any outside incursions or as a military foreign force acting domestically when national military morale is low or when there aren't enough military personnel. There's also the problem with outside influences. Foreign enemies of the state will use the opportunity of internal turmoil as a means to occupy allied countries. For example, if the United States of America is in a civil or revolutionary war, China will invade Taiwan and maybe Hawaii, North Korea will invade South Korea and Japan, Russia will invade Alaska and maybe Hawaii if China doesn't, Cuba and maybe Venezuela may occupy parts of Florida. Former allies may support their insurrectionists. For example, Mexico may send troops to parts of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And Canada may send troops to Alaska, Washington, Minnesota, New York, Vermont, and Maine. Imports of supplies must continue, so shipping lanes must be protected for a sustained effort. In conclusion, any authoritarian, totalitarian, or fascist regime will be a losing position in the first half of the 21st century. To ensure success, they must have strong foreign allies. They must control a united country with no opposition, and they must rely on their own empirical dictates rather than from another country. Learning from World War II, all weaker fascist countries were either conquered by a stronger fascist country, were toppled internally, or were liberated by allied countries. For the United States of America under the Trump regime, he must ally with Russia, China, or North Korea. The current allies of South Korea, Japan, and the EU is not enough. The U.S. must also be under his direct control, with no opposition from political opponents or military and militia groups. And finally, Trump must detach himself from Israel and rule directly and not as a vassal for another country. So, to end this episode, let's just say civil wars and revolutionary wars won't be pretty. It will be unconventional, and it will be a losing position for any government authority.